Hello, Rebels. Garrett Robinson here, independent author of the Realm Keeper series, the upcoming novel Rebel Yell, which comes out on August 15th, Touch Trilogy, Non-Zombie, Hit Girls, Ninja Bread Man, other books as well, and currently working on the Nightblade fantasy serial, which releases every Friday at noon Pacific Standard Time. Welcome to my show, VlogaNovel, where I create a book from beginning to end, completely live for you, on air for you to see. The book in question this week is Nightblade Episode 2. I'm doing the audiobook narration, and that's what we're doing. And since we're a little bit behind schedule now, I'm going to pretty much jump right into it. The one thing I want you to know is that you can buy this book as an ebook in the link in the blue section of the screen below my face, and the link to buy the first episode is also down there. The second episode won't make much sense without the first episode. So there you have it. That being said, like I said, we're going to dive right in. We finished chapter 1 in the first recording session, and then a crying baby woke up. So we are going to delve right into chapter 2 here. Sound check. Okay. Chapter 2. Chapter 7. Lauren scuttled for the trees, keeping as low as she could. The forest enveloped her like an old friend, and she felt safer the moment she came beneath its shadow. She plunged further into the scrub brush that covered the forest floor. But as soon as she lost sight of the road, she paused. She could not be sure the men on the road were her constables, but something in her heart said they were. And if so, she should keep an eye on them. But how could she ensure they would not spot her? Just south of where she stood, the land rose steeply to form a low ridge that ran alongside the road for what looked like many miles. Lauren made her choice and ran for the rise. The trees grew thinner as soon as the ground rose, forcing her to move from cover to cover. Finally she stood atop the ridge, a large cave at her back descending into the earth. She stepped behind the trunk of a tree, and then poked an eye around it to look north. The men had drawn near. They drove their horses hard, the beasts' flanks streaked with white. They would pass her in a few minutes. She need only hide and wait until they had passed. Once they left her behind, the rest of her journey to Cabris would be in safety. Lauren slid a hand along the dagger's hilt. A good scare, certainly, but nothing to worry about. We're safe. She moved back behind the tree and slid down against its trunk, and her heart nearly stopped. The ground quaked under the impact of heavy feet. Not 3 yards away, a bear emerged from the mouth of the cave. Its nose twitched as it snuffled the air, tiny eyes fixed on her. Its black fur stuck out in great bristles as its hackles rose. 2 cubs cowered behind their mother's hind legs, looking at her with equal parts curiosity and fear. Lauren's throat went dry as she stood once more. Her hand slid to the dagger, but she dismissed it. A fool's hope, she thought. The dagger would serve no better against the bear than her own nails. But the birchwood held many bears, and Lauren knew what to do. It would mean exposing herself to the road again, but that seemed preferable to bollocks. It would mean exposing herself to the road again, but that seemed preferable to serving as the bear's supper. She sidestepped away from the tree and took several steps backward. At her movement, the bear hunched down slightly and growled, but it did not advance. Slowly Lauren backed down the slope, never taking her eyes from the beast. Another step. Another. If she could only get far enough, she knew she could run without the bear giving chase. On the next step, her foot caught on a rock. The slope worked The slope worked against her, and she nearly crashed to the ground. The sudden movement startled the bear, and it took 2 great steps forward with a roar. Even at a distance, Lauren could smell the reek of its breath. She risked a glance over her shoulder. The constables had pulled their mounts to a halt directly adjacent to where she stood. As she watched, they spurred their horses into the woods toward her. Perhaps they thought her some chance girl in trouble and did not recognize her from the forest, but they would know as soon as they saw her close. She must leave, and quickly. An idea sprang into her mind. She stomped the ground as hard as she could, throwing her hands into the air and screaming an angry roar. Most bears would have backed away, but this one had cubs. The bear took 2 half-steps and then broke into a run. The ground shook, and Lauren's legs tensed in readiness. Just before the bear reached her, Lauren leapt to the side. The bear could not stop so quickly, and the loose soil gave way beneath her. She tumbled and rolled head over paws down the slope. A great plume of dust followed her down. But Lauren could take no time to exult in her quick thinking. She ran up the ridge as quickly as her feet could carry her. The cubs fled into the cave in terror, but Lauren paid them no mind. She reached the... She reached the top of the ridge in no time and plunged down its far side, her feet... She reached the top of the ridge in no time and plunged down its far side. Her feet lent sudden speed by the slope. Just as she passed over the top, she heard loud shouting behind her. Just as she passed over the top... Just as she passed over the top, she heard loud shouting behind her, joined by a roar. The constables had encountered the bear. Perhaps it would occupy them long enough for Lauren to make good on her escape. She forced herself to slow, though every part of her screamed to go faster. Her quick wits would mean nothing if she fell and broke a leg, or her neck. She picked her way on solid ground and rocks, avoiding any patch of ground that looked like it might slide out from beneath her. But with all her caution, haste and bad luck caught her at last. A rock she'd thought sturdy shifted and tumbled beneath her foot. Lauren went down with a cry. She twisted to land on her front and planted her hands in the turf. It hurt, but she knew the bow on her back could not withstand... It hurt, but she knew the bow on her back could not withstand a tumble. The bow! She could find a high spot in a tree, wait for the constables to approach, and then plant shafts within them before they knew what had happened. As quickly as she thought it, she cast the idea aside. Even if she could shoot with such skill, Nightblade could not murder. Her only hope lay in escape. So she pushed off the ground, wincing at the sting in her palms, and kept running. Before long she heard the thunder of hoofbeats coming down the slope behind her. They had evaded the bear, then, or killed it. She risked a glance over her shoulder, but she could not see them through the trees. That meant they could not see her either, at least, but she could not outrun them forever. She scanned the forest and saw something that might help, a fallen trunk with a hole beneath it. Lauren dove in, careful not to snap the bow against the entrance. Not a moment too soon. The thundering hooves grew louder, and then they were upon her. But she had hidden in time. She saw a flash of red-boiled leather between the trees a few yards away, and then the hoofbeats receded. Lauren waited until she could no longer hear the horses, and then she waited longer still. In the sudden silence of the woods, her pulse sounded like rolling thunder in her ears. When she felt sure they must be gone, she slid out from beneath the log. A phlegm right in the back of the throat. Most annoying thing in the world. A cluster of firethorns stood nearby, unruly but straight as a hedge. It ran south, crosswise to the slope. Lauren ducked behind it and slid along on hands and feet. In silence and shadow she crept, poking her head above the top of the bushes every few moments to look for the constables. Now that she had a moment to observe, she could see that this side of the ridge also ran down to a road. It ran south as far as she could see, though she had to imagine it cut west and joined with the main road eventually. She must gamble now. Either the constables would make for this smaller road and follow it, hoping to catch her, or they would climb the ridge and make for the King's Road once again. That seemed the likelier course. They had only seen Lauren, not Zane. They might surmise she had separated from the wizard and returned to the main road in hope of catching him. Then Lauren realized that the forest around her had grown too quiet. An arrow sped from between the trees to thunk into the tree beside her. Lauren's whole body jerked in shock. She dropped flat and slid beneath the firethorn. The arrow had come from above. Somehow the constables had circled around to her rear. She had underestimated their woodcraft, and perhaps for the last time. Why would they try to kill her? They wanted Zane, not Lauren. As if in reply, she heard Corin's voice. "Stay your hand! Leave her whole!" Byrne, the one with a harsher look, shouted a reply that Lauren could not make out. Crashing footsteps sounded from up the ridge, much higher than she had feared. Perhaps she could yet evade them. Once she passed beneath the firethorn, she rose to flee in a crouching run. Now that she had their measure as woodsmen, she would withhold nothing. She used every trick she had learned in a lifetime in the birchwood. Her thoughts faded to a dull murmur, and instinct took over. Her feet found the hardest ground, and she twisted and weaved to avoid snapping any branch. She wrapped her cloak tight, letting its brown fade her into the forest. The sounds behind faded away. She pressed on. She looked upon the road again. She looked upon the road again. Now she could see a caravan sat upon it. She looked upon the road again. Now she could see a caravan sat upon it, wagons pulled into a rough line. People in bright clothing sat clustered in a group at the head of the line. Men in shirts of mail and shining helms stood guard around them. But the back of the caravan lay unattended. Lauren made for the tree line. Many yards of open space stretched between the forest and the wagons, but that could not be helped. If she could make it to one of the wagons unseen. The closest guard turned and walked away, and she seized her chance. She broke from the trees and raced across the rocky ground, as fast as she dared while staying deadly silent. Her cowl flew back, and her auburn hair streamed in her wake. She expected at any moment to hear a cry of alarm or the sound of drawn steel. None came. She reached the back of the rearmost wagon, then slipped down the line to the third wagon from the last. Still no one stood in sight. Without a sound, she leapt up and over the wagon's edge to the shadows within. Yay, team. Nine takes to get through the whole thing. Not too bad. Chapter 3. Chapter 8. Lauren inspected her surroundings with hasty eyes. Bolts of cloth lay on wooden shelves that lined either side of the wagon, and a thin aisle ran up the center. A merchant's caravan. She hoped that would help. From what Lauren knew of the rich, they did not appreciate the eyes of the law and had skill at turning them away. But even a cursory look would find her here. The merchants had packed their racks too tightly for Lauren to slip in amongst them. She almost turned and left, but then she heard footsteps in the dirt nearby. Her heart skipped a beat, and she burrowed further down the aisle in the wagon's center. Then she saw that she had been wrong. One shelf near the front of the wagon lay empty in the shadows. Lauren slid into the shelf, squeezing as far from the aisle as she could manage. A great shout sounded outside, followed by the hiss of drawn steel. For a moment she feared she had been discovered, but the sounds retreated, and she realized the caravan had spotted the constables. She heard hooves approach, then pull to a stop not far from her wagon. "We are the king's men, about his business," came Corin's burbling voice. "And what business has the king with us?" came a sharp reply, a woman's voice. Why do I have the feeling y'all are commenting? No, no comments. Oh, leaving me all alone to record this audiobook by myself. Fine. "We pursue a man and a girl." This time Burns spoke. "They fled us south on the King's Road. We spotted the girl on that ridge. She may have come among you." "No girl came," said the woman. "We have seen no one since yesterday. Who is this man you seek?" "He is between our heights," said Byrne. "He may have worn a blue coat or a dark green. He may have worn a blue coat or a dark green cloak. His hair hangs long and curled." "We saw him, or one like him," said the woman. Lauren put a hand over her mouth to stifle a gasp. "When?" said Corin. "Yesterday," said the woman, "just after the sun had set. He came upon our camp at night and offered us fair payment for a horse. He refused to rest the night, though we offered him hospitality. Instead, he rode on, south along this road." The constables remained silent a long moment, or if they spoke, Lauren could not hear their words. "He did not have a girl with him?" Corin said at last. She would have been young, in forester's garb. Of course he didn't, said Byrne. We just saw her. No one came with him, said the woman. Alone he arrived, and alone left, nor have we seen any other since. If you pursued him, I am sorry to have sold him the horse, but we could not have known he deserved justice. Of course, my lady, said Corin. Last night, you say? I do. Then we must away. We thank you. Hold, said Byrne. The girl is near. Again they fell quiet, though this time Lauren felt sure the constables must be speaking softly. That proved true, as their voices gradually rose louder and louder in anger. Finally Byrne spoke again, loud and clear. If you have not seen her, it will not matter if we search your wagons. They carry only goods for trade, said the woman, indignant. When Corin spoke, he sounded as though he held anger in check. My stalwart friend is perhaps over-eager, he said, but mayhap the girl arrived without your knowledge and stowed herself away. Lauren searched around her in panic. They might not see her from the wagon's rear, but then again they might, and if they came inside they would find her for certain. Come now, said the woman. Our guards stand vigilant. She is not here. Let us see, then, said Byrne. His voice had taken on a mean edge that Lauren did not like. Her eyes roved again over the inside of the wagon. No better hiding place presented itself, but as she glanced at the floor, her eye caught on something. A shaft of sunlight fell upon a board that protruded from the wagon's floor. She leaned out and gripped it with her fingers. It sat loose. She lifted, and a large panel rose silently. Beneath lay a compartment, cunningly hidden. Within sat several packages wrapped in brown cloth, but more importantly, plenty of space remained for Lauren to hide herself. Like a snake she slid into the compartment. Then she held the wood panel up on all her fingers, lowering it into place without a sound. She could... excuse me. She could not be sure it lay flush, but she could do no better. She heard the constables move down the caravan toward her wagon, drawing closer. She heard a gruff snort, and then the wagon shook. Heavy boots thudded onto its floor, and Laren. Heavy boots thudded onto its floor, and Lauren barely kept from yelping in fright. Through the cracks in the panel above her, Lauren spied Byrne's grim features. The constable walked up the length of the wagon, peering. The constable walked up the length of the wagon, peering into every corner. He stuck his nose right into the shelf where she had hidden. After a moment he turned and stalked to the back of the wagon. The whole thing shook again as he climbed out. The constables moved slowly away while Lauren waited for the next 20 minutes. 20 minutes that felt like an eon. At long last she heard conversation again, though too far away to make out, and then she heard the thunder of galloping hooves. Still she waited, waiting for some clue or sign of safety. Instead she heard voices again, one a man's, deep and booming, and the other belonged to the woman she had heard earlier. I think we got a baby again. One a man's, deep and booming, and the other belonged to the woman she had heard earlier. "They found none of the compartments?" said the woman. "None, my lady," said the guard. "I followed him every moment. He never so much as glanced at his feet." "That is good," said the woman, "though too close a thing regardless. I do not like surprises." "Nor I, my lady," said the man. Their conversation ceased then. Lauren thought they must have moved away. After waiting for a few minutes of silence, she reached up to lift the wood panel off. A quick glance told her no one stood behind the wagon to see. Show A quick glance told her no one stood behind the wagon to see, so she slid out of the compartment and replaced the panel, then crept to the back of the wagon. Now guards stood in thin stretched rows down both sides of the caravan, eyes turned outward. Her escape would prove more difficult than her arrival, it would seem. But as Lauren surveyed their positions, trying to work out the best angle to leave, a child appeared from nowhere. She sprang up from below the edge of the wagon's back panel, a tiny thing with skin as black as pitch. Yellow brocade glinted on a muted purple gown, matching the shine of her innocent eyes, wide as dinner plates. They grew wider still as she gaped at Lauren. "Who are you?" cried the girl. "Are you the one the constable sought?" Lauren fled for the front of the wagon. It had a smaller opening than the rear, but still large enough to slip through easily. But as she dropped to the ground, she found herself facing a yard of bared steel. She froze. Her eyes traveled up the length of the sword to the man who held it. He dwarfed any person she had ever seen. His skin, like the girl, nearly glowed in its darkness. All but his hands, which were bright pink. But Lauren could scarcely look. But Lauren could scarcely look away from his eyes, for they were solemn and uncompromising as stone. He wore a shirt of chain and a silver helmet like the other guards, but also steel pauldrons wrought with gold inlay. Lauren took him in for a moment, and then her knees buckled and she collapsed to the ground. She cowered at the steel point of his sword, ready to leap forward and plunge into her chest. "Who are you?" said the man. She recognized the booming voice from earlier. I, I, she stammered. The word Nightblade leapt into her mind and vanished like a puff of smoke. "Gregor, lower your blade." The woman arrived, her voice even more distinct in the open air. From her eyes and the shape of her face, from her eyes and the shape of her face, Lauren knew at once that this must be the little girl's mother. But where the girl was all bounce and innocence, in the woman's face Lauren saw a grim determination more steely than her captain's sword. That sword lowered, its point sinking into the grass. The woman strode up, swirling her dress around her with a flourish. Like a wizard's trick, the little girl appeared just behind her mother's legs. Lauren thought at once of the bear cubs. "You are the girl the constable sought, I imagine," said the woman. No trace of a question lined her words. I I am," said Lauren, finding her voice at last. More of her wits gathered to her, and she hastily added, "My lady." "Help her up." Gregor seized Lauren's shoulders and hauled her to her feet. To Lauren it felt as though he could fling her into the sky, but he set her down almost gently on her heels. The woman gestured with 2 fingers. Gregor took 3 steps back, quick and yet unhurried. The woman stepped forward to take his place. Her hand leapt out to cup Lauren's chin and tilt it up. She studied Lauren's face for a moment. "How came you by that eye?" she said. "Not from the constables, I hope." "No," said Lauren, unsure how to take this. She winced as the woman probed the black eye with a finger. "That gift I received before their pursuit began." "Hmm." The woman removed her hand and stepped back. "Do you choose to withhold your name?" Lauren blinked, then bowed. "I am Lauren, my lady, of the family Nelda." "Damaris," said the woman, inclining her head, "of the family Yeren. Well met." "And you," said Lauren, keeping her head and most of her body bent. She could not shake a keen awareness of Gregor and his sword. "Oh, stand, girl," said Damaris. "I am a merchant, not the queen." Lauren straightened. "Thank you." "You are pursued, and rather hotly, it seems," Damaris went on. "Tell me why." "They spoke the truth. I traveled with the Lauren clamped her mouth shut, her cheeks flaming red. "With the man they sought." Damaris's nostrils flared. "I thought I heard a secret hidden in their words. But a wizard? That is remarkable. I suppose I should count myself lucky the man did not cast us all in fire and steal the horse he needed." Her eyes flicked past Lauren to the wagon. "But tell me, the constables were thorough. How did they miss you?" Lauren heard something in Damaris's tone, and thought she knew what it might be. "I found a I found a loose floorboard. "I found a loose floorboard in the wagon's floor, my lady," she replied. "I hid myself beneath it." "In that wagon?" said Damaris, pointing. "Yes, my lady." Damaris's voice took on an undercurrent of steel. "And did you see anything else concealed within the floor?" Once again, Lauren heard the meaning beneath the words, and so she said, "Not a thing, my lady. The compartment lay empty, with plenty of room to stretch my legs." Damaris relaxed, lips twitching in a smile. "It is such a pleasure to find wit and charm in a chance stranger." Lauren bowed again. "My lady is too kind. I give only the truth." The tension on the air melted away, and Damaris's daughter emerged again to study Lauren. Her wide eyes roved up and down. Lauren had the uncomfortable feeling of cattle under inspection. "Will we give her to the constables, mother?" said the girl. Lauren's heart slid into her throat, but Damaris shook her head. "We will not," she said. "They sought the wizard more keenly, I think, and he abandoned her, and putting her in the hands of the law would gain us no profit." Lauren seized upon Damaris's hidden meaning. "I know of the hidden compartments and what lies within them," she thought. "If they give me to the constables, I might speak of them." It gave her a sense of security. When two It gave her a sense of security. When two strangers walked together outside of the king's law, neither could gain much from the betrayal of the other. Then she thought again, and realized that might not be so. If such knowledge indeed proved dangerous, Lauren's corpse would serve Damaris better than her presence. Lauren's eyes flitted to Gregor and the bare steel he still bore in his huge gloved fist. As though she read Lauren's mind, Damaris shook her head. "Fear not, girl. Not needlessly do we spill blood. Such policy serves one who lives by the sword, but rarely is it profitable to those who live by the coin." Again she motioned with two fingers. Gregor slid his sword into its scabbard, though somewhat slower than would have made Lauren feel comfortable. "Thank you, my lady," said Lauren. "It would seem I am in your debt." "I have given you nothing," Damaris replied. "I have merely neglected to take anything away. Now, where are you bound?" Lauren thought of a lie she might tell, but the thought went too long, and she abandoned it. "Cabras." "And your wizard friend?" "Cabras as well." "Do you seek for him, then?" said Damaris. That gave Lauren pause. Did she? She did not know. She only knew that she had begun her journey with Cabras in mind, and nothing had given her cause to change course. But Zane? Mayhap she would find him, but she would not be surprised if he had quit her forever. "I do not, my lady," said Lauren. "He seemed eager to part ways with me, and I have no reason to think that may have changed in the day since." "And did he give you that kiss upon your face?" said Damaris. Lauren shook her head quickly. "No. In fact, he rescued me from—" She paused. She had nearly said "my father," but something held her tongue. Damaris did not need to know, and doubtless did not want to know. She said instead, "I was trapped. Zane provided the means of my—" Jesse Jameson chimed in and said, "Great speaking voice. You would have done the War of the Worlds broadcast well. Ever want to do radio?" I do radio. I have two podcasts. No, I've never really wanted to do radio. "I was trapped. Zane provided the means of my escape. Though I know not why he left, I bear him no ill will." Damaris nodded. "Very well. If Cabras be our destination, then our paths lay upon the same road. You will travel with us, at least for now." Lauren swayed on her feet. "I would not be a burden upon you, my lady." "No," said Damaris, "you would not." She turned with a whirl of her dress and left, Gregor close on her heels. The daughter remained. Her eyes gazed wide and white, striking Lauren again with their intensity. Dark brown irises made the whites all the more prominent. After her mother had left earshot, the girl stepped forward. "I am Annis," she mumbled. Mumbled? Annis doesn't mumble shit. "I am Annis," she said. Lauren bowed. "I am Lauren, of the family Nelda. Well met." "I know who you are," said the girl, giggling. "You told mother." "Still, manners are never out of place." Annis's smile dampened as they roved Lauren's face. "I don't think the one who gave you that eye had very good manners." Lauren's hand rose to her left eye, brushing gingerly against the dark bruise. "No, he did not." "Are you a great fighter?" said Annis. "Have you killed many men?" "With this?" Lauren laughed and pointed at the bow. "This is no bow for fighting, nothing worthy of a great name. Squirrelbane, you might call it." But she felt keenly aware of the dagger on her belt, and she drew her cloak a little closer over it. She did not think anyone had seen it, and it might be best to keep it that way. Annis giggled again, oblivious. "You're funny. Come, you may ride with me in my carriage." Lauren followed the little girl off toward the front of the caravan, but as she neared the front wagon, she felt a keen gaze upon her. Glancing up, she saw the dark and solemn eyes of Gregor fixed upon her. Though she met his look, he did not turn away. All right. Oh, the next chapter is so long, we're not going to finish it, but we'll start it anyway. Unless that's a baby. "16 takes on chapter 3. Yeah, I'll take it. Crowshaven said, "The trials and tribulations of editing and doing a narration." Yes. Indeed. Let's see how far we can get before our hour is up. Chapter 4. Chapter 9. The caravan rang with the shouts of men preparing to leave. Annis had a carriage near the front. Lauren balked at the sight of it. Lauren balked at the sight of it, all stained mahogany and well crafted. "I do not wish to impose upon your mother's hospitality," said Lauren. "Surely she would rather ride with you alone." But Annis only laughed and showed her inside, where Lauren found the carriage empty. "I have my own carriage," said Annis. "I do not ride in Mother's unless I want to, but it's terribly boring. Mother and Gregor talk of nothing but the road south, while Mother and Gretchen talk of nothing but the accounting books and how much profit they've made upon the road." "Have you traveled far upon it?" said Lauren. Annis shrugged. "This is my first journey. I do not know how far is far, you might say. Only this summer has Mother consented to my presence on the caravan. I have lived upon the High King's seat all my life." Lauren gawked. "The High King's seat? I have heard it is a place of wonder. Are the streets laid with marble?" "Goodness, no," said Annis with a titter. "Only cobblestones, like any city." Then her mouth twisted in doubt. "Well, like I imagine any city would be. We've only passed two upon the road, and one reeked with plague. Mother did not let me open my window, much less leave the carriage." Lauren shuddered. She had never known plague, but some of the village elders had told tales. A great A great plague had swept across Selvan in her grandparents' youth, and the birchwood had not gone unscathed. "But I speak too much of myself," said Annis. "Mother and my tutors say that is always my way. Tell me of yourself. What do you seek in Cabris?" Lauren felt her guard rise. "I come from the birchwood," she said. "It is a great forest, the greatest in Selvan." "Odd," said Annis, turning to look out the window. "I have not heard of it." "You have seen it," said Lauren, "if you rode along the Melnar, or the King's Road at all. It runs north of the road from the High King's seat until the road crosses the river." "Oh, I think I remember," said Annis, nodding. Her eyes still wandered out the window. "You could not have helped it," said Lauren, feeling her hackles rise. "And how did you come by that?" said Annis, pointing once again to Lauren's black eye. Lauren felt taken aback. The girl's manner seemed overly frank, her questions brief and to the bone. Rather than answer, she asked, "How old are you?" "I have seen 12 years," said Annis. Lauren smirked. "Ah, still a child, then." It worked. Annis straightened on her bench, her brows drawing together and her lips pinching in an angry scowl. "I am not a child. I am nearly full grown, for our women do not grow tall, and I am half again as clever as any of my tutor's other pupils. He has told me." Lauren le- Lauren leaned against her cushions and raised her hands, smiling easily. "I meant no offense." Annis's face relaxed somewhat, but her eyes no longer wandered as though Lauren had ceased to entertain her. Feeling more at ease, Lauren decided she might as well answer the child's question. What could it matter? Her father lay in their house far away now, no doubt nursing the wound in his thigh. "As for my eye, my father gave it to me," said Lauren. Annis's mouth opened into a small O. "He did not take kindly to my desire to leave home. He pursued me, and when he found me, he gave me this, and more." Lauren twisted in her seat, and lifted the edge of her tunic to reveal her ribs. Black bruises stood out against the pale white of her skin. Other older bruises shone yellow, older gifts from her father's meaty fists. Lauren pulled the shirt up higher, until Annis could see the bruises that ran across her chest and all along her back. Annis squeaked and leapt across the carriage to yank Lauren's tunic down. She released the garment like a snake and withdrew, sinking into the purple cushions of the carriage seat. "What is wrong?" said Lauren. "I did not mean to frighten you." "Frighten me?" squeaked Annis. "I Why not just strip naked?" Lauren blinked. "What, do all the peasants of your village simply walk around nude but What, do all the peasants of your village simply walk around nude beneath the sun?" said Annis. "Are you savages?" A scowl twisted Lauren's features. "I can say, at least, that we are not partial to insults. What is the matter? We're women both." Annis stuck her nose in the air. "In civilized circles, we do not go around parading our bodies. It is unseemly." Lauren snorted. "Very well, I shall not trouble you with my savage customs and peasant's body." She pushed away from the bench and threw open the carriage door, striding out onto the grass. After a moment, the carriage door slammed shut again. Lauren walked the rest of the day. The caravan moved in no great hurry, their horses plodding along at an easy pace. Soon she forgot her annoyance with Annis, and enjoyed the sights of the strange land around her. The ridge she had crossed soon turned into a low mountain range that ran south, following the course of the road. Or, she supposed, the road followed the mountains. Every so often she looked back toward the caravan to see Gregor studying her beneath his gleaming helm. Soon she had to make up her mind to ignore him. How could Lauren blame him for being suspicious of a mysterious girl pursued by constables? Eventually the sun neared the tops of the mountains. The wa- 8 minutes left. We're actually doing pretty good. The wagons pulled to a stop for the evening. Unlike at the midday meal, this time they pulled into a tight circle by the side of the road. The guards dismounted and began to build a large purple tent set amid the wagons. Lauren did not need to guess who would sleep there. She decided to head for the trees while some light remained. Damaris had offered food, but Lauren did not want to endanger her hospitality by burdening the caravan's supplies. And if Annis spoke to her mother, they might want Lauren to leave. But before she could set off for the woods, she heard footsteps and turned to find Annis. The girl stood there, hands clasped behind her back and eyes fixed on the ground. She looked for all the world like a village child about to receive chastisement. Lauren almost smirked. Lauren almost smirked. "I am sorry I insulted you," said Annis. "I didn't mean it. Only we are not so free with ourselves as you are." "No apology is necessary," said Lauren, feeling very gracious as she bowed. "I should not have presumed to be so forward." Annis looked up at last. "You are not angry with me, then?" Lauren sighed inwardly. She could not help the thought that Annis would anger her again before the road ended. But she smiled. "Of course not. I make for the woods to catch myself dinner. When I return, would you sup with me?" Annis's eyes grew wide as they had when Lauren first saw her. "Of course. I would be delighted." Lauren left her with a smile and made for the woods. She soon saw a squirrel and a rabbit, but both her shots went wide and she lost an arrow. Then she spotted a quail just as the last light died in the sky. Her arrow flew true, and she picked up the bird to bring it back to camp. She built a small fire and began plucking. But before she had the quail ready for the fire, she felt a presence in the darkness. She looked up and squinted. Damaris's dark face appeared, her eyes glinting in the flickering flames. Mouth gets so dry doing this, it's crazy. "Did you find our provisions unsatisfactory?" she said. "I could have had one of my men fetch a bird for you if you wished." Lauren laid the quail down and stood quickly to bow. "No, of course not, my lady. I did not want to impose upon your generosity any more than I already had. Free passage south is a great gift, and I would not ask you to feed me as well." "Yet you do not even take our passage," said Damaris, "for you spend much of the day on your feet." Lauren blushed. Lauren blushed, feeling somehow off balance. Had she delivered some insult? These people had strange customs, and she seemed to break them at every turn. I have never been in a carriage before, and I found the motion disorienting. She did not think it would help to say that Annis had called her a savage. I shall tell the driver to be more gentle, then, said Damaris. Her voice betrayed no emotion, yet Lauren felt that she had angered the merchant. I will happily ride tomorrow, my lady, said Lauren, bowing low, and I apologize if I offered any insult. Oh, do not trouble yourself, said Damaris. Now, Annis has taken it into her head to sup with you. I said that you likely wished to be left alone. Annis appeared behind the... One thing that I like about Damaris is that she's actually very emotionally manipulative. Um, when you have people who are manipulative like that, they just like to they like to make people feel off balance and uncomfortable. Even if nothing's really wrong, it just gives them a sense of security to have everybody else sort of like wondering if they've upset them and tiptoeing around them. It's really a pretty terrible thing. Um, but yeah. Annis appeared behind her mother's legs, like a goblin leaking. Annis appeared behind her mother's legs, like a goblin leaping from the dark. She does not, mother. She asked me. She would be most welcome, said Lauren quickly. I did offer, but I would never think to pull her from your company. Oh, I think it is good of her to spend time with others, said Damaris. Indeed, I often have trouble prying her from my side. Her stern look seemed to melt away, and a warm smile spread across her features. Rather than feel reassured, Lauren felt even more unsettled. Annis squealed and leapt forward, sitting on the ground beside the fire without a second thought for the fine purple dress she wore. Damaris inclined her head, and then turned to vanish into the darkness. "What did you catch?" said Annis, leaning forward. "It's a quail," said Lauren. "It will be ready soon." She picked the bird back up and kept plucking. "Are you a good hunter?" said Annis. "I can feed myself," said Lauren, "but I learned from a boy in my village whose skill dwarfed my own. He can bring a stag down at full sprint. He—" With memories of Chet came a lance of pain. She stopped talking and bowed her head over the quail, pretending to work. Annis did not notice anything. "What was your forest like?" she said. "Did you like it there? I have only ever seen the seat. This is my first time in the wilderness." Lauren would heart. This is my first time in the wilderness. Lauren would hardly have called the tame land a wilderness, but she thought better than to say so. "The forest was a good home to me," she said, "but the people within it were less kind. My parents notably so." Annis's face fell. "Were they very cruel?" she said. "They seem like the wicked step-parents you hear of in stories." Lauren snorted. "In stories, the parents lock the daughter in a high tower to keep her from her true love. They do not beat the daughter for failing to chop enough logs. They do not whip the daughter for mussing her dress." Lauren's fingers had grown tight around her hunting knife. She forced them to loosen. "How could you stand it?" said Annis. "I think I would have gone mad." Lauren smiled. She looked into the darkness to either side of her, as though searching for an eavesdropper. "I might have done. Did you ever think of that, my little lady?" She flipped her knife over the back of her palm, and drops of blood spattered the dirt. Annis gave a little squeal. "How did you learn to do that?" said Annis. "I wish I could flip a knife." Lauren chuckled at Okay, the hour is up, so that will be it for this recording session. We will finish it in the next one. We're actually well past, we're like 2/3 of the way through chapter 4, and chapter 5 is actually not that short. Whatever, we'll still finish it easily in the next hour. So, yeah. Baby awake. Perfect timing. Okay, cool. Well, I'll find my place next time. This has been VlogaNovel. Just a reminder, you can order this book. It is in the blue section of the screen right below my face where you can find the link. And the link to the first book is also in there. I am really needed by my wife right now, so I'm going to go. Thanks very much for watching. I'll see you soon. Bye.